now that Trudeau is gone or sort of gone, like, what was that? Who was he working for, actually?
I can tell you, Tucker, he was not working for us, for Canadians. He did destroy our country economically, socially, and culturally. What he did to us during COVID-19, that was an authoritarian government. I don't know if you remember that, but I did an interview with you after.
Very well.
Yeah, I was handcuffed and put in jail for non-crime just in the summer of 2021 because I was speaking about freedom in a park in Manitoba. And he did impose on us also a vaccine passport. I wasn't able to travel across the country because I'm not vaxxed, But what he did to our country...
Do you regret not being vaxxed?
Oh, no.
Do you ever think, I really wish I'd had the COVID vaccine?
No. That was the best decision in my life.
Me too. I totally agree. Sorry, not to make others feel bad. So he went about it so systematically. He got the government to pay for killing your citizens through the MAIDS program. Like, everything he did seemed designed to destroy Canada, like, on purpose. If you wanted to destroy the country, you would do what he did. Why do you think he did that?
He is a socialist for sure, and a globalist, and the World Economic Forum for him was, the great thing, and they were promoting socialism and globalism, and nobody imposed that philosophy on us, on Canadians. Trudeau was very pleased with that, and he decided to put legislation into place, into force in Canada, in line with that philosophy. And, for him, he was spending money like it was not a big deal. Actually, what he did, he was able to double the debt that we accumulated over 148 years. He was able to double that in 10 years. So our debt went...
doubled the debt in 10 years.
The debt that we accumulated over 148 years, it took him 10 years to do that. So the debt was $600 billion, and he doubled that to $1,200 billion. And he said, deficits are okay. When you have a deficit, it's a way to stimulate the economy. But we know that, you cannot stimulate the economy with borrowed money. It's a sedative for the economy. So now in Canada, we are I believe, in a recession. Our standard of living is going down. Actually, what he did with mass immigration, that was, his dad was a big proponent of multiculturalism. Every culture are equal. So, and he did that in the 1970s, that philosophy. And now we have a legislation in Canada promoting multiculturalism. But add that with mass immigration, you have the perfect storm. You have people who are coming to our country, and you don't ask them to integrate into our society. You can keep your culture. You don't integrate into our society. We live in ghettos, and we have ghettos in Canada also. So a lot of people came to Canada, and the economy was growing because of the growth of the population. But, the population was growing faster than the economy. So our GDP per capita went down the last 10 years. So we are poor today in Canada if you look at what we had 10 years ago. And it's because of Trudeau. It's because of mass immigration. It's because of big spendings. That's the legacy of Justin Trudeau.
Tens of thousands of Canadians killed themselves during his time. I mean, if there's one measure of happiness, it's like you don't kill yourself. Yeah. So if you have Canadians killing themselves, tens of thousands of them, then that... So my question is, why isn't he in jail? And we're all excited to send all these people to jail. Andrew Tate must go to jail or whoever. But like, I don't understand why Justin Trudeau's not in jail for destroying an entire nation.
But the good news right now is not in government anymore, but we still have the Liberals. But we need to have a real inquiry about everything that happened during COVID-19. These people must be responsible. And you're right. And now they are not. It's like they want to turn the page about what they did to us during the COVID hysteria. For them, that was okay. That was not okay. We had a Charter of Rights. They did not respect our Charter of Rights. And, look at the Freedom Convoy. The Freedom Convoy. For me, that was not a protest. That was a celebration of who we are as a Canadian.
Yes.
We decided, okay, now we will end that authoritarian government peacefully. And what Trudeau did, he invoked the Emergencies Act.
Yes.
That's an act that he used in times of war against us, against freedom fighters. And, but at the end, we were successful because, a couple of months after that Freedom Convoy, all these authoritarian measures, they disappeared. And these politicians were not saying it's because of the Freedom Convoy, but it was because of the Freedom Convoy. People were fed up at that time. And, but I cannot understand why everybody's saying in Canada, that's okay. Just forget that. Forget what happened to you during COVID-19. We needed to do that because to protect yourself. But we know that vaccine was not safe and effective. And we are still promoting the mRNA vaccine in Canada right now.
We're doing it in the United States too. Yeah, and I don't understand why.
Yeah. And our proposal on that is a moratorium. We want a moratorium on immigration, a pause on immigration, no more immigrants for a couple of years until we fix the problem of mass immigration, and also a moratorium on these mRNA vaccines.
We would like that too. You never kind of get what you really want, do you?
Yeah, but you need to fight for that. You need to fight for that.
So what is Trudeau doing? I mean, there are many people responsible, I would say. I actually am one of the only Americans who's interested in Canada and really loves Canada. Because I live near Canada, and so I've followed it, and I think there are a number of people, not just in Trudeau's party, but in his coalition party, who are responsible. But he's the most responsible. So what is he doing now?
I don't know. I don't want to know, Tucker.
But he just gets to walk around Canada free?
Oh, he's still free.
They put people in prison for opposing him.
But I can tell you, he needs a lot of security when he's...
I bet he does.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look, we are fed up with the Liberals. And right now in that electoral campaign, it's all about, there's only one subject now. It's not, I wanted to this election to be on mass immigration. That must be the most important. It is destroying our way of life, And when I'm speaking about mass immigration, people don't understand that last year in Canada, we had 1.3 million foreigners coming to our country for a country of 40 million people. That is mass immigration. And
that's an invasion.
97% of the growth of our population last year was coming from mass immigration. This is the replacement theory, but
it was not a theory; it's a reality. The Canadian population, like the American population, the European population, replaced.
That's what is happening in our country right now. And the immigrants that are coming here, the foreigners that are coming to Canada, are coming from countries that doesn't share our Western civilization values. So it's more difficult for them, and they don't speak English or they don't speak French. They cannot integrate into our society. That's a big problem. That's a huge problem. And now you have the housing crisis because of that. Too many people, all these people need a roof. So, but the solution is, it's a question of supply and demand. You just have to stop the demand, and that will solve the housing crisis.
Of course.
But, Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, like the Republican Party here in the U.S., but they're not conservative. They're conservative in name only. The
Pierre Poilievre.
Pierre Poilievre is the leader of the Conservative Party.
He seems like a true fraud to me, like a pretty sinister fraud.
But, he's doing a campaign against Trump. They don't want to do a campaign to help Canadians and put our country first. Now it's all about, the tariffs and, we need to do counter tariffs. But that's killing us. Because
how about stopping immigration from India and Pakistan? Is that
first, please, yes, first. That's.
But that's not even a consideration.
No, they are pandering. They are pandering. The Liberals and the Conservatives are pandering to these ethnic communities for votes. So that's why they don't speak about ending mass immigration. Actually, Poilievre said we need to have 250,000 foreigners a year, plus international students, plus temporary foreign workers, plus refugees. That will be about 1.5 million foreigners over 3 years. That is mass immigration. In the middle of a mass immigration crisis, we cannot afford that. We cannot. That's destroying.
So can I say, again, just to the question I asked about Trudeau, I'm going to ask the same about Poilievre. Who's paying him to do that? That's not, no one's benefiting. Maybe people from Bangladesh are benefiting. Yeah. Okay, I'm not against them, by the way. I understand. I'd move to Canada too if I lived in Bangladesh. But no one in Canada is benefiting from this. So why would Poilievre and Trudeau be embracing the same policy that everyone hates and is destroying Canada?
Yeah, you have a point there. 70% of the population in Canada, the last survey, are saying no to mass immigration. We must end mass immigration. So your question is, if these politicians want to be elected, how come they are not listening to the population?
Exactly.
Because there's 343 ridings in Canada, and that's a parliamentary system. So they're looking at different ridings, and they want to have support in different ridings to be able to have a majority. But in a lot of ridings, there's a majority of foreigners or immigrants, and they want to have their support. But the new immigrants, so they are asking for having their family here in Canada with them. When I'm speaking about family, it's not the immediate family. Mother, father, and children. No, it is, your uncle, your grandmom, granddad, brothers, sisters, so the entire family, and they want them here in Canada. So they're saying, okay, reunification of family will do that for you. You'll be able to bring all your family here in Canada. So because of the electoral system, they're looking to win some ridings to have a majority. And that's why they are not speaking for Canadians. They're speaking for different people in different ridings where they have a majority there.
So what you're really saying is that a democratic system does not produce democratic results. We have these democratic systems throughout the West that have for 50 years done the opposite of what their populations want.
Yeah.
So it's a democratic system without democracy. That's the way it feels to me.
And when you have another point of view, like us, the People's Party, about that, they try to cancel you. They don't want you. They don't, the mainstream media in Canada, they won't, it's like I don't exist as a populist party in Canada. So they don't want our point of view to be out there. So I need to do podcasts and, being with you and traveling across the country and doing my campaign on social media. That's the only way to be out there. And they know if more people can understand our position, we will have more support, but they don't want that. All these, they're globalists. I'm the only one who's fighting for the sovereignty of our country. For them, more people would be okay. And for me, let's just have that pause.
But they're not
destroying our country.
Really globalists, are they? Because they're not doing this to China and Africa and the Middle East. They're not saying those nations need to invite a lot of people from different parts of the world. So it's not actually global.
It's only one side.
It's anti-Western.
Yes,
they're saying that there's something about a majority white Christian country that's inherently threatening, and we're going to destroy it. And that's it is exactly what they've done. It's around the world.
What they did that in France, in UK, in Germany, and now in Canada.
Yes, you've got basically Russia left, and of course that's the country they hate most. So it is a tell. They're not screaming at Chairman Xi to let in a bunch of people from Nigeria. It's not even on the table. Yeah. They're not even demanding Japan do that. It's just Canada, UK, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and the US, and that's it.
That's it. And what they're doing, if you are a leader of a nation, your first responsibility is to work for your people. And it's immoral what they're doing right now because they're helping foreigners more than Canadians.
Of course.
What Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and Carney, the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, they're saying on mass immigration, we will solve that. We will build more houses for them. So what they're doing, they want more foreigners, and that's why they're building more houses. But that's not to solve the housing crisis for Canadians. No, that's, they are putting their energy to be sure that foreigners will come to our country and they will have a roof. I'm saying, no, just stop that, please. Let's work for our people first.
But why do they hate? I mean, look, in the end, you understand motive by action. Like, how does someone feel? I don't know. Let's watch what he does.
Yeah.
So if you deny your children food, you probably hate your children. Yeah. You can say whatever I love my children, but if you're not giving them dinner, you hate them. And so they clearly, Poilievre and Trudeau and Carney, really hate Canadians. Why is that? Why?
What they like, it's power. It's I wish I have the answer to that, but they're telling you the opposite. They're telling you that they love. Tucker, they're in that trade war with the U.S. right now.
Yes.
Poilievre and Carney are saying to us, Canadians, we love you. We love you so much, Canadians, that what we will do, we will impose counter tariffs because Trump is bad. President Trump is very bad, and we want to keep our country united. We are a sovereign country. We love you. We will impose a new tax on you, 25% on everything that you are importing from the U.S. I told you, the inflation is high in Canada. Our standard of living is going down, and they add to that a new tax, 25%, and they're telling us it's because we love us. They love us, sorry. And so it's crazy. And they're okay with that. And the former Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, I was with him. I was a Conservative before. I was elected for 13 years. I was a Minister of Foreign Affairs and Industry Minister under the Harper government. I resigned and we created the People's Party in 2018. But Harper just wrote a letter in the National Post in Canada 3 weeks ago. And he said, we need to do that trade war with U.S., dollar for dollar. And you're 10 times bigger than us. We won't win a trade war against the U.S.
That's true.
And he said, dollar for dollar. And he said, yes, it will hurt us Canadians. And yes, we may start a recession, but that's okay. So what I'm telling Canadians, no counter tariffs. It's a tax that you impose on Canadians and Canadian businesses. You must stop that. We must have a deal with President Trump as soon as possible. And we are able to do that if we put everything on the table. But for Carney and Poilievre, no, that's okay. And actually, last week about these tariffs, Carney said, okay, we will impose another tariffs on the car imported from the U.S. And he said the government will be able to raise $8 billion. And we will give that to big corporations because they are affected by these tariffs. They cannot export their products to the U.S. So what he's telling us, I will take $8 billion for the poor consumers with that new tax. You Canadians consumers, you will pay that. And I will give that to big corporations, taxing the poor and giving that to the rich. That is the policy of the Liberal government, and Poilievre is okay with that. That's crazy, and that is killing our economy.
Why would a government spy on its own citizens? Well, of course, because it doesn't trust its own citizens, because it's afraid of its own citizens. When you're spied on, you're not free. No privacy, no freedom. So cameras everywhere, recording devices always around you. These are reminders that you have no control over your government or your life. Civil liberties exist only at the behest of the people in charge, which means they don't really exist at all. We're sorry to tell you this, but big tech is using these same tactics on you, the consumer, who's actually the mark. They watch and track everything you do online. They hover over you like a dark cloud, and you can't get rid of them. Well, unless you take extraordinary steps. Unless you have ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN gives you privacy, which gives you freedom. It sends all of your online traffic through secure and encrypted servers. It blocks data brokers from watching what you're doing. You have privacy again and therefore freedom. It hides your IP address. That means nobody can track what you're doing online. Again, you are free when you have privacy. There's a reason ExpressVPN was ranked the number one VPN by the experts at CNET, also at The Verge and US News. It really is the best, and we use it here. Now you can get an extra 4 months of ExpressVPN for free. Just scan the QR code on this screen or go to expressvpn.com/Tucker. Get 4 extra months for free. That's expressvpn.com/Tucker. How much support does Poilievre have?
Yeah, both of them are about tied in the polls right now. But I don't know what will happen.
Are there real differences between them?
On tariffs, no.
On immigration, no.
On immigration, no. On climate change, that's a good one. Poilievre is supposed to be a conservative. It's supposed, our position, the People's Party, is to withdraw from the Paris Accord.
Of course.
Like Trump. But for Poilievre, the conservatives and the liberal, there's a climate emergency in Canada, and we must do everything.
Because it's too cold in Canada?
Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's too cold. Yeah,
it's still pretty cold in Canada.
Yeah, I had a cold, so it is a little bit cold. But that being said, for Poilievre and Carney, they want to impose a carbon tax because Canadians don't want it. So they are listening a little bit to Canadians, but they want to impose more regulations on businesses. They want to impose other taxes to fight climate change and to be able to achieve the Paris Accord goal that we have. And at the same time, look at that. CO2 for them is a pollutant. CO2 is not good, and we need to capture the CO2. So they're giving billions of dollars to a new technology to capture CO2 and put the CO2 down in the ground. So it's so bad
it's
for
like
you.
A joke.
Yeah,
it's like a joke.
But Tucker, there's one natural technology to capture CO2.
Yes, there is.
This is plants.
Trees,
plants. It is food for plants. We need more CO2. We don't need to capture CO2 and put that in the ground, but they will spend billion of dollars that we don't have.
Their children. Yeah. And they're also hamstringing your country, preventing it from being rich on the basis of its abundant natural resources, which Canada has. Like the US, like Australia, has amazing natural resources. And they're basically saying we're not allowed to use them because the Chinese don't want us to. It does seem like China controls your country. I'm just like...
But speaking about China, CSIS is our secret service. And they did an investigation, and they said, that's not me, they said it, that our election in 2019 and 2021, we had Chinese interference in our elections. The Chinese Communist Party was giving money to some candidates from Chinese origin. So it's happening in our country right now. But Poilievre is okay with that. And they said also there's MPs, members of parliament in the Conservative Party of Canada and in the Liberals Party of Canada who are not loyal to our country. They said it. And we want to know the names of these people, but Poilievre and Carney and Trudeau before that, they don't know. It's secret. We won't tell you who these people are. So we have members of parliament in the parliament in Canada where their first goal is to help their country of origin, China or India. So that is happening because of mass immigration. If you have all these people who are coming to our country, they're not part of this country. They're coming here only because of the economy. They want a better future economically. But, they don't share our values and their loyalty is with their country of origin.
Of course.
So
you've had political assassinations that have nothing to do with Canada at all. I mean, we have the same problem here. Everyone's yelling at each other about the Middle East. We've got nothing to do with the Middle East.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people who have got a lot of strong feelings about the Middle East that have nothing to do with America at all. And we've got these massive protests, people yelling at each other about these faraway countries. It's totally nuts as our population withers and dies. But you have the same problem. And you've had... Sikh, Indian, rival. I don't even understand some of it. I'm not interested.
Yeah, I'm not
I
interested.
don't think I should be interested, but you've had people killed over this.
Yeah, I'm not interested. Also, they're coming here and they're bringing their internal conflicts, the conflicts of their country of origin on our street. They're doing that in Canada right now. So, speaking about the Middle East, I'm not pro-Palestine. I'm not pro-Israel. I'm pro-Canada.
I feel the same.
So we don't have to do anything over there. And our position is, we won't have any impact on the politics in Middle East. That's you in the US who will have the greater impact there. So that's why I'm saying I don't want to speak about that. That's not our issue. And same thing for the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine, I was the only leader saying, no, we must not participate in that war. But Poilievre and Trudeau at that time and now Carney, they are pro-war and they are pro, the war in Ukraine. And actually right now, President Trump, he's doing the right thing. Try to have a peace deal with Russia. And we in Canada are saying to Zelensky, we'll give you more ammunition. We'll give you more resources. Let's have that peace deal.
And they're always, I notice every time I see your political leaders, they're always talking about they've got very strong views in the Middle East. It's like a massive debate in Canada. I'm kind of agnostic on it personally, but I just wonder, what does that have to do with Canada? They spend so much time talking about it.
Yeah, we must not talk about that. Absolutely. We must talk about the real issues. No more climate change, no more Paris Accord, no more World Health Organization, the UN Global Compact on Migration. Canada signed that compact. So that's why, for the UN, migration is okay. Everybody can go in any countries and, living there, you can be a citizen of Canada. No, it's a privilege to be a Canadian, and that must be it. But, with that mass immigration, it is not a privilege anymore. We don't do anything.
It's sad because it was, Americans always made fun of Canada, but in a sort of sweet way. And I think a lot of Canadians always resented the United States because it's this huge country, right? I get all that. But in real life, Canada was always a very sweet, nice country and beautiful, truly beautiful country. And you have this disastrous 10 years where your life expectancy goes down, your standard of living goes down, the country really starts to fall apart and become authoritarian, the opposite of the sort of sweet Canadian culture you remember. And then your option is a guy who actually agrees with the tyrant who destroyed your country. So it's almost like our system. It's like we have Obama, who's clearly hates America, terrible for America, but our option is John McCain and Mitt Romney, who agree with Obama. It's like it all seems fake, kind of. No?
But we are the only option for Canadians. That's what I'm telling Canadians. We are the populists, and we can do a populist revolution based on free markets and respecting Canadians and working for Canadians. But, that revolution will come in Canada. Like in UK with Nigel Farage, he had 15% of the vote at the last general election in UK. He was able to elect only 6 candidates. But now in the polls, if you look at the polls in UK, he's leading these polls. So that's good for him. And you have Marine Le Pen in France. I hope she'll be able to be a candidate for the presidential election. So that movement started here in the US with Trump, and it is coming to Canada. That we are representing that movement. But, it's these two leaders are the same. I call them, the uni party. Liberals or conservative, they're LibCon party. That's the same on the most important issue. And now in that electoral campaign, they are using slogan. Poilievre is using, so I'm here for you. I'm going to put Canada first. He's saying that seriously by saying more war in Ukraine, more mass immigration. He's not speaking about ending the deficit.
More climate suicide.
Yeah, climate suicide and all that. And, our enemy is Trump, President Trump.
And so you said you can't get on Canadian media, which is
mainstream media.
It's state media, right? I mean, doesn't your government give money to the media?
CBC and Radio-Canada in French, $1.2 billion. But the federal government is giving also $800 million to other, media, mainstream media, CTV, Global Mail. And so we will cut that. We want,
Why not have a free media? Why? State media is for North Korea, right? Isn't that?
Yeah.
Like free countries don't have state media, do they?
That's why we want to cut that spending. And if Radio-Canada or CBC, they're going bankrupt, that's it. That's okay. That's the free markets. But they are the propaganda arms of the federal government, these mainstream media. And, the narrative on COVID, and now you have, at that time, during the COVID hysteria, you didn't have the other narrative on mainstream media. And now the narrative is, we must save our country from Trump. We are independent. We just need to have a good deal with President Trump. And so that's the narrative right now coming from the mainstream media.
So can you get your message? Like how do you get your message out in Canada?
Today with you.
Wait, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
You got to fly to the United States.
Absolutely.
Do Canadians look at social media?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's the future. I'm the only leader of a national political party in Canada who is doing podcasts. And Poilievre and all these other, they cannot sit for an hour, 2 hours and having a discussion. They cannot do that. So, but the new way of doing politics, Trump did it, President Trump did it, and, was successful. You need to have a discussion and explain your point of view and your political philosophy, political position. So I'm doing that. I'm the only one. And it's helping. Yes, it's helping. And I think...
How are you treated by the Globe and Mail and CBC and Radio-Canada?
I don't exist.
They don't even mention you.
No, I don't exist for them. I don't. And actually, look at that. I did participated in the leaders debate in 2019. We created that party in 2018. 2019 was our first election, and I did participate in the leaders debate against Trudeau and at that time. But in 2021, they created a new rule, and they said, okay, Bernier, now you don't have the right. And that commission, that leaders debate commission, it's only to exclude. They exist only to exclude the People's Party. And at this election, I was supposed to be able to participate in the national debates that will be next week. But they changed the rules just to exclude us. So that's not fair. That process is not fair. They're so afraid of our ideas. They don't want us to have any traditional platform.
That's frightening. Right. Can you raise money?
Yes, we have generous by using, our emails and our members. And yes, we have money. We are able to raise money. And I want to thank our donors. They're very generous. And so you need to be a Canadian citizen to donate.
Yes.
And if they want to donate, they can go on our website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca, click donation. That will help us.
Where are the French in all this? I always felt, most Americans made fun of the French Canadians. I know a lot of them. I have a lot of French Canadian friends. I live near French Canada, and I've always liked them, and I've always defended them. And I always liked them because they defended their own culture and their own language.
Yes.
They're a little hard to deal with, The rest of the French always complain about them and their license plates in Quebec and all that. But I always thought when it came right down to it, the French Canadians would defend their land, their culture, their language, their history.
And they're doing that right.
Are they? I hope so.
Yeah, they are doing that right now. Look at the provincial level in Quebec. There's the Parti Québécois, the separatist party. And a young, charismatic leader is the leader of that party. And the election at the provincial level in Quebec will be in 2026. And he's speaking about separation. And separation is growing in the polls right now. Why? Because of Trudeau, because of mass immigration. The Francophones are looking at it. All these immigrants and foreigners that are coming to Quebec and Canada who don't speak French, they cannot integrate in the Francophone culture.
Yes.
So they don't like that. So they're looking at the Parti Québécois, and the Parti Québécois is winning in the polls right now. And the leader said, if I'm the new premier of Quebec, a year after my election, I will do a referendum on the independence, the sovereignty of Quebec. So it's back now because of mass immigration. And in Alberta, they're so mad about Ottawa, and because they cannot exploit their natural resources with climate change regulations against the oil and gas industry. More Albertans are separatists now. So I'm telling Canadians, we are the only hope for this country. If we want to save this country, the People's Party is there because we will respect our Constitution. We will have a radical decentralization. Alberta will be able to do that. We won't participate in the Paris Accord. We won't participate with these globalists at the UN or the World Economic Forum or World Health Organization. So we'll be a real independent country. But Ottawa will be a smaller government that will be only in charge of its constitutional responsibilities and not interfering in provincial jurisdictions. Now you have that separatist movement in Alberta because of the federal government that is, telling Albertans what to do, and Albertans don't like it, and I understand that.
Do you think there's a chance that Alberta joins Montana?
They can stay in the country, and I hope that they don't stay in the country if the People's Party position is adopted in our country, if we win, because we will have a radical decentralization, and I believe and will respect their jurisdiction, provincial autonomy, and I hope that they will stay. If not, they will want to be independent, or they can be the first 51st state. I don't know. But that being said, my goal is to unite this country, and with our policies, we will. But if we go with Poilievre or Carney, that would be the end of this country in a couple of years. And actually, Preston Manning was the leader of the Reform Party in the 1980s. And that at that time, the Western Canadians were very mad at Ottawa with Trudeau, and they had that regional political party, the Reform Party, and very successful. And after that, the Reform Party did merge with the Canadian Alliance, and after that, the Conservative Party of Canada. So the Reform Party does not exist anymore. And our platform, it's about 90% of the reform, more autonomy, less government, fiscally responsible. But Preston Manning said 2 days ago that, if nothing's changed in this country, it will be good for Alberta to separate. He's saying that as the former leader of a party that tries to have Western back in Canada, by changing Ottawa, and he was not successful. And now he's saying to Albertans, separation, I'm okay with that. If Ottawa doesn't do anything for us, that will be the only solution. But we need, and that's why, for me personally, I decided to jump into politics in 2006 to have a federal government that will respect our Constitution, that will be a smaller government, that will have a real free markets. But that is not happening.
Now, we're sure you've heard plenty of those free phone promises from America's biggest wireless carriers. If those deals sound too good to be true, it's probably because they are very often too good to be true. They come with layers of fine print requiring you to sign up for 4 lines, plus activation fees, plus this, that, the other thing. You don't even understand what you're signing up for. And by the time you're done, you've paid for that free phone 3x. It was a pretty expensive free phone. It's kind of a scam, honestly. Our wireless company is called Pure Talk, and it's got a much better and much more straightforward offer, and it comes with no strings whatsoever attached. With a qualifying plan of just $35 a month, you get legitimately the brand new Samsung Galaxy A26 for free. It's actually free. There aren't hidden costs. You're not signing up the rest of your life or promising to name your kid after them or something. From virtually indestructible Gorilla Glass to next-generation camera lenses, the phone has basically everything that you want. All you need to do is switch to Pure Talk. $35 a month for unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspot, all on America's most dependable 5G network. Go to puretalk.com/talker to claim your free Samsung Galaxy with qualifying plan when you switch to Pure Talk, wireless by Americans for Americans. Do you know Justin Trudeau personally?
I had a dinner with him when I was in Parliament, when he was in the opposition. A long time ago, and he's full of himself, but he's a funny guy. But
he's charming in person.
Oh yeah, he's charming, he's funny, and but actually, it's all about himself.
Yeah,
it's all about himself.
Is he Fidel Castro's son?
That's a good question. we need to have a DNA on that.
But do people in Canadian government believe that he might be?
But some Canadians believe for sure. Oh, actually, yes. And, that's on social media. You can see
So it's not just a crazy theory. That could be true, you think?
But for some, it's crazy. For others, it is not.
Yes.
But it is a real question.
Certainly looks like it.
He looks like it, yeah.
I'm not for socialized medicine, I guess, but I don't have really strong feelings. I just want something that works, I guess, is what I really...
But it is not working in Canada.
Well, it's just sad because you would go to Canada. I've spent a lot of time there hunting and fishing. And even the conservative Canadians said, we've got this great healthcare system. And they were so proud of their healthcare system. I mean, they really were. I remember very well, 30 years ago, they would always tell you, and they were a little bit insecure and defend, we're Canada, we're a real country. They'd always be like that. But we have this great healthcare system, and they really were proud, I think.
Yeah.
Were they?
But that's not the case right now. That's not the case right now because the waiting list for surgeries, you can wait a year. So, we are spending a lot of money for healthcare, and that's not functioning.
But do people feel like it's not working in Canada?
Yeah, more people. Actually, more people. So they're ready. My position is for every Canadian to have an insurance. Everybody will have an insurance, and they will be able to choose if they can go to a private hospital or a public hospital. Like in Sweden, like in European countries, they're spending less on healthcare, but they're more effective. For us, we need to put more competition in the system. So, and that would be a mixed system. We don't have that right now. There's in some provinces, like in Quebec, you can have, private clinics that can do some surgeries, but all across the country we need to have more private delivery of healthcare services, and we don't have that. And so more Canadians now understand that, and they're ready for that reform. But establishment politicians won't speak about that because it's a taboo subject to ask for more private delivery of services.
But the system itself doesn't work very well right now.
Doesn't work.
Immigration must be putting huge strain on that system.
That's why on that system, on our infrastructures, on healthcare, on
schools, housing.
All that housing. That must be the first priority for us in Canada, and for the mainstream media, the mainstream politician, it is not. We are, with the Liberals, we are going, driving into a wall, and with the Conservative, we are driving into a wall, but at a different speed. That's sad.
Same here. I'm not a conspiracy person, but like if every quote democratic system in the West has the same outcome, which is two parties that fundamentally agree on the big issues but pretend to hate each other, while the real concerns of the population are ignored. You got to wonder, how did every country in the West wind up with the same fake system? Honestly, how did that happen?
Yeah. We must admit that the globalist organizations and the World Economic Forum, they have huge influence. They are think tank. They are promoting their socialist, globalist ideas in Canada, in other countries. And you have our elites. They are going to Davos. They like that. And that's a good idea. They think that they know better than us what is good for Canadians. And, they want to fix everything. And, a solution to every problem must be a governmental solution, must be a solution that is coming from the government. But the government is the problem. We have too much government in our lives. So that's the problem in Western society right now. Mass immigration, big government, big deficit, high inflation, all that must change.
Do you have friends or family who've left Canada?
I know people, not family, but I know people. They said, it's business people are saying, I don't want to invest in Canada right now. And our private investment is going down, and you need investment for economic growth.
Of course.
So some people are leaving the country, but my goal, I'm telling them, stay in Canada, do the fight with me. Together, we can do that fight. We will win that battle of ideas. We have the best ideas based on individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, small government. We have faith in people. We don't have faith in a big fat government. So stay in Canada, fight with me. And that's the fight. We need to win that fight.
Why did they take all your guns away?
Oh, Trudeau did it. And he was very successful to do it. Trudeau doesn't want us to defend ourselves. And that's why in our platform we have the Castro doctrine. You must be able to have a gun. You must be able to defend yourself and your property with that. We need to change our criminal code for that. And our position as a political party, we will repeal every legislation that Trudeau put in to be sure that he will eliminate all the guns. But for him, and for the conservative also on guns, they're dangerous. People are not responsible. They must not have guns. So that's why we have very tough legislation on guns in Canada.
I noticed
and they don't respect property rights on gun. The federal government can decide tomorrow, and with a new regulation, this gun is illegal, and the RCMP, our police, will go and seize your gun.
You're very heavily armed. I've had a couple encounters with Canadian law enforcement over the years, bad encounters, and boy, they're heavily armed and very aggressive. Very aggressive. They're not the kind of polite Canadians you think about. RCMP is like not anyone to mess with. They seem like a military force to me.
But now they're a woke organization.
I know.
The leader of the RCMP, they're woke, now in the RCMP and in the Canadian forces, you can be a soldier for us without being a Canadian citizen.
What?
Without being a Canadian citizen, you're an immigrant. You can participate in the Canadian forces.
So you're not a citizen of Canada, but they'll hand you an automatic weapon?
And defend our country that you don't know.
But a Canadian citizen can't have a gun at home. But they'll give some foreigner an automatic weapon, a fully automatic machine gun.
A very dangerous one, yeah.
Okay. So that suggests like they don't have good plans for you. That's not a good sign, right?
That is not. That's why we need that revolution. We need to change the leadership at the Canadian Forces and RCMP, having real people, promoting people because of their competence. The DEI in Canada, it's killing everything. Trudeau gave
still.
Trudeau, the Liberals are giving a lot of money to third-party organizations to promote DEI,
anti-white. Policies.
Absolutely. They're doing that, and they're gonna promote people based on the color of the skin in the government and in the Canadian forces, based on your sexual orientation. We must not do that. It's against the Western civilization values. We must promote meritocracy. So I'm saying instead of DEI, it must be not diversity but unity. Instead of equality, it must be everybody must be equal before the law.
Exactly.
And that's part of our values. And inclusion, you want to have people who are not competent to do something, and in the government or in the Canadian forces, it must be based on meritocracy. That's why what Trump is doing, what President Trump is doing in the US, fighting that. It's great because our mainstream media now in Canada, they have to speak about what is happening in the US, and they're speaking about what President Trump is doing, and promoting meritocracy and ending all that woke ideology. And so that is part of the narrative now in Canada. So more people understand what is DEI? What is the woke ideology? Because when I'm speaking about that, and it's part of our program for the last 6 years, when I'm speaking about that, the mainstream media won't cover me. So now they are speaking against a little bit the DEI because they're telling us what Trump is doing in the US, but for them it's very bad. But at least they're speaking about that, and so people can think, promoting people based on your competence must be the thing that you must do.
We're always looking for cool companies that make products that make you feel better, and that's how we ran into Bon Charge. Bon Charge offers a wide range of products that improve your physical condition, help you sleep better, perform better, and center your mind. Recover faster, maintain energy, etc., etc. They make blue light glasses, red light therapy, a lot of different products like this. And they help you address the trials of modern life effortlessly and naturally. Now, one of the things they make is a sauna. We could go on and be boring about sauna. Take one every single day. But Charge makes a sleek infrared sauna blanket. It's got a similar effect to a Finnish sauna, but without the intense heat. It's an easy and comfortable 30-minute session you can enjoy while relaxing with your family, talking to people, reading, and it leaves you feeling refreshed and slightly euphoric, but in a good, healthy way. It's a great addition to your wellness routine. You may even drop a few pounds doing it. Boncharge ships worldwide. Boncharge, whether it's Boncharge, offers free shipping and allows for easy returns and exchanges. So go to boncharge.com/Tucker. Use the coupon code Tucker to save 15%. I wonder at a certain point, and clearly Trudeau and Poilievre and the rest of them, Carney, think this too, but like, how far can you push people before, they respond in an unreasonable, violent way? I mean, if this wasn't Canada, if it was any other country, I would say, boy, they're going to get a revolution if they're not careful. Like, you can't oppress people like this. Yeah. You can't offer them suicide instead of healthcare. You can't flood their societies with foreigners. You can't destroy their standard of living. You can't throw them in jail for expressing opinions without provoking like a violent response. Are they worried about that? Is that why they took your guns away?
If they're worried about that, I'm not worried about that as a leader of a...
I'm against violent revolution, just for the record.
Yeah. I'm against also that. No, it will be, the revolution will come when people would be ready, and it's happening right now. You can see the change. You can see we have more support as a new political party. People understand the battle that we are doing, and I believe it would be a quiet revolution. They're going to say, enough is enough, and that will happen. But as soon, I don't know, it may be in a couple of years or a couple of months. We never know.
But you see throughout the West, the democratic system controlled by authoritarians, excluding people from the system. You see with Marine Le Pen right now in France. You were just knocked out of the debates. Georgescu in Romania, arrested for running on a populist position, the most popular politician in the country, and he's arrested because he's the most popular. Yeah. So they're basically denying people a democratic outlet for their frustrations. They're saying, even your voting, this country, they stole the 2020 election, obviously. They're basically not allowing people any way to express their views at all. And that seems like a scary thing to do.
Well, we can have another freedom convoy in Canada that was very successful. And, that was successful because at the end, we were able to stop these draconian measures on us with that freedom convoy. So maybe something like that can happen. A very peaceful protest in Canada saying to our politicians, enough is enough. It can happen. Yeah.
Who is Carney? Can you explain who Mark Carney is?
Oh my God.
He's the leader of the Liberal Party. He was the replacement for Trudeau.
He is the globalist in chief. He was, as you know, Tucker, the special envoy on climate action and finance for the UN. And he wrote a book about climate change and imposing a carbon tax. But now he's a politician, and he knows that it is not popular to impose a carbon tax. Canadians they don't want to pay more taxes anymore. So he said, I want to impose a carbon tax. But he is part of the elites, with the UN and the World Economic Forum. For Canadians right now, it's like, that's a Trudeau 2.1. But, he looks more competent because he was the governor of the Bank of Canada. And he believes in printing money out of thin air, that we can have deficit and, the Bank of Canada will buy Canadian bonds. And so like they did during COVID-19. I'm waiting for him and Poilievre to tell us when they will balance the budget. I know what President Trump is doing in the U.S. with Doge. We need to do the same in Canada. We need to do the same. And I said that in 2020. We need to have a department of downsizing the government. We need to do that. But he is a big spender. And for him, and Poilievre spending money that we don't have, it's okay. That is creating inflation. And we are paying the inflation tax in Canada right now.
What kind of support does Carney get from new Canadian citizens? from immigrants.
He has a lot of support from the mainstream media. Now, the mainstream media is promoting him. You can read the news in Canada since the beginning of the electoral campaign. And Carney, it's always the way that they present Carney in the news. It's always the more favorable way. So that's good for him, because now, if you look at the polls, he's doing well, but I don't trust these polls anymore. But with the population, with that narrative, they're looking for somebody that will save the country against President Trump. The campaign is not between, Carney against Poilievre and, they're fighting against each other. No, both of them are fighting against Trump with the tariff, and they're fake patriots. They're fake patriots. They're using that. They're using the fear of the tariffs and the economic situation in Canada and to promote themselves.
Of course.
With a fake patriotism.
And there is pre-existing sensitivity about the United States. I mean, that's part of what it is to be Canadian. There is a love of the United States. This is my read as an observer of your country. There's a love of the United States. A lot of Canadians love the United States. But there's also resentment because it's just so big and it's right there.
Yeah.
And that resentment is real. I mean, I've always felt it when I'm in Canada. And they're basically, and Trump has allowed them to do this. I mean, let's be honest about it.
But we must understand what President Trump is doing, the global view of all that. He started with tariffs. That's okay. It's a way for him to negotiate. We must not do counter tariffs in Canada, but the end goal is to repatriate the manufacturing industry in U.S. And, he wants to make America great again. He's fighting for you guys, for Americans. I want to do the same in Canada. I'm fighting for Canada. I'm fighting for Canadians. So it's okay to want to have the manufacturing sector back in the U.S. For us in Canada, we just have to be more productive and lower taxes to businesses, having a more productive economy, a real free trade across the country. There's a way to do that for us to keep investment here in Canada, but our policies are not efficient anymore. And there are too many taxes, too many regulations, and so. But what President Trump is doing, the real solution for that, and the problem, it's because of your dollar. As you know, Tucker, the dollar is the world's reserve currency.
Yes.
And because of that, you have the Tariff dilemma. So, your dollar is very strong, and other countries need your dollar because, for international transaction, to buy oil and gas, they need your dollars. So you are exporting your dollars, and your exports are very expensive and not competitive because your dollar is so strong.
Exactly.
The demand for your dollar is very strong. So and your imports are very cheap. So the way to solve that, to be able to export, is to end the dollar as the world reserve currency. But that would means a very tough transition.
Well, yes, it does.
With inflation, all these dollars will come back to the U.S. and that will create inflation. So we need to end that fiat currency and going back to a gold standard. And that's why I believe, gold is coming to U.S. right now. And I think something will happen. We'll have a monetary reset or something will happen. And here in Canada, we are not in a good position because our central bank, the Bank of Canada, doesn't have any gold reserve. So if we have a new monetary system...
You have no gold reserves?
No gold reserve.
Why?
They sold all that.
They sold your gold reserve?
Oh, yeah. We have a lot of your treasuries, but we don't have any gold.
No.
We are the only central banks, the only one in Western world that doesn't have any gold.
But Canada is a huge gold producer.
Yes, at least we can produce gold. Yeah,
a lot of gold.
Yeah,
you have actually some of the I think you've got some of the deepest gold reserves in the Canadian Mint.
Yeah.
Of course, your gold 1 ounce coins are currency or investment.
Yeah.
For people around the world, that's interesting.
But our central bank doesn't have any gold. So
who thought that was a good idea?
I don't know, but they decided to solve all that a couple of years ago. And now we are in a very bad situation because I believe that, the role of the US dollar will be very different.
Yes, that's
something
obvious.
will happen to solve your problem about, the manufacturing
It's a
sector.
blessing and a curse. No, that's right.
Yeah.
Having the world's reserve currency is, and once the war in Ukraine started and sanctions were used as a weapon, the dollar was used as a weapon. It was the end of the long term. It was the beginning of the end of the US dollar.
Yeah, the de-dollarization is coming, and it's happening right now. So it's a question of time. But I understand that President Trump wants to do the transition, but it will hurt. It will be difficult.
Yes, it will.
And I agree with him about his end goal to have manufacturing sector back in the US. I want the same in Canada. And so we must have a real good economic policies. And, the way to solve that, we have our Bank of Canada, did the same thing like the Fed during COVID-19. We printed a lot of money. Now we have that inflation. And I'm the only politician who's saying, we need to have a zero inflation target with the Bank of Canada. Our Bank of Canada has a target of 2% inflation every year. 20% inflation, Tucker, is bad.
Yeah.
2% inflation is bad. We need to have zero inflation. Like that, everybody will keep their purchasing power. And so, and if you want to have that, you need to have a balanced budget. So we balance the budget in first year. We tell the Bank of Canada a zero inflation target. We have surplus, and all the surplus must go to lower taxes to Canadians, and a flat tax on business, no more capital gains tax. That's our proposal for Canadians to have a better and a more productive economy. Poilievre won't speak about that. Carney won't speak about that. But we need to tackle that. President Trump is doing that right now. He's trying to do that right now. There's a cost to that, but at least he's not kicking the can down the road
For sure.
like everybody did before him.
If you have debt levels at the level that Canada does, certainly the United States, much bigger debt than Canada's, the government needs inflation.
Yeah.
The government creates inflation because that's the only way to get out of the debt, right?
Yeah.
No one says that.
No.
This is like a product of choices that our policymakers consciously make in order to, inflate down the debt.
Yeah, but that's what happened after the Second World War. In Canada, we had, in the 1940s, we had 10 years of inflation to pay for the debt that we had after the war. So now, not only the US, Canada, and all Western countries, have huge debt, huge deficit. So something will happen. So, and, we will have to reevaluate gold. We may have a kind of a gold standard. But inflation is bad for the population. It's good for government because they can print money, and giving us a lot of gifts with paying for a lot of programs. But that is creating inflation. And now you have inflation in the US, and we have inflation in Canada, and we may have that inflation for the next 5-10 years. That's a way to deal with the debt. And I'm saying that, the deficit of today or the taxes of tomorrow or the inflation of tomorrow. So the inflation is coming, is there, and it is coming. And when you have inflation, what will happen after that? Interest rate, they will have to go up. So we are in a very difficult situation, Canada and US and other, Western countries right now. So that's why what Trump is doing by all these tariffs is asking all these countries, come and have a negotiation. But I believe the negotiation won't be on tariffs. It will be of a new monetary order. We need that.
I think that's right. And it's inevitable. We're getting it.
Yeah.
De-dollarization is real. And again, it's just inexorable. You can't stop it. So it does seem big picture, if you're just looking at the world, a lot of these conflicts are about resources, like physical things.
Yeah.
Oil and gas, iron ore, bauxite, grain, gold. Right? Uranium. Canada has a lot of, not all, but a lot of those things, some of the deepest deposits in the world. Water. Canada has massive amounts of fresh water. So I'm wondering what's happening to all your resources. Is anyone paying attention? Because China needs the resources to fuel its manufacturing. Broadly speaking, Asia needs those resources. Are they still under Canadian control?
It's a good question because China tried to buy some of our resources a couple of years ago, and at least the federal government did stop that. So yes, it is under our control. But the problem is not who is controlling our natural resources. It's we are not able to exploit them with our regulations and taxes. The last 10 years, the Trudeau government told the industry, the mining industry, and oil and gas, we need to get rid of that. It's not clean, and we cannot exploit that. So he put a lot of regulations. We cannot have pipeline. We cannot exploit and export our natural resources. No pipelines. So and that's the problem. It's the regulations and the fact that the federal government is doing everything to stop the exploitation of our natural resources. Trudeau did everything to do that, and he was successful. So now we don't have any pipelines, and so we are sending our oil and gas to you guys, to the U.S. at a discount because we cannot have access to other markets. So good for you, but bad for us. So we need to do that, and this country, Canada, can be a great country if we have the right policies.
So I think it's very obvious that climate change has been going on since the beginning of time, right? We had glaciers, now we don't, et cetera, et cetera. The climate is always changing. Natural phenomena are responsible for the overwhelming amount of that change, not human activity. Like, that's just science.
Yeah,
Anyone who says otherwise is a freaking liar.
Yeah.
I think over 90% is caused by...
Yeah, and we need more CO2.
Exactly. But like a country like Russia, which is slightly more rational than the West, I would say, looks at climate change and says, well, wow, this is good for us because we're a really cold country, and huge parts of our country are inaccessible because of cold. And if it gets warmer, that's like good for us.
Yeah.
That would be especially true for Canada. There are whole parts of Canada. I mean, Canada's like much bigger than the United States, and everyone in Canada is 50 miles from the U.S. border. Why wouldn't like Hudson Bay be a...
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much opportunity in climate change in Canada. Does anyone ever say that?
Yeah. But no, it's bad. No, it's bad climate change.
But how is it bad if you're Canada? I don't really get that.
No, it is not bad. But for them, it is so bad that we must fight that. And it's so bad that we think that we can control the climate. It's crazy. We human can control the climate by, regulation and things like that. It's so complex that we cannot, but there's no climate emergency. Can you understand that?
Well, also we can't control the climate.
Yeah, we can't. You're right about that.
Right, because we're not God.
Yeah.
Canada was a religious country. Even when I was a kid, the French Canadians were very religious. They built all through the northern New England. There are all these temple cathedrals built by
Catholics. Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
And now they're all empty, sadly. But and those cities are all African. But anyway, there was a time when Canada was a very religious country. Now it seems like one of the most non-religious, atheist countries in the world. Is that your...
But we are not promoting our history as a country with that Multiculturalism Act. You can come here and and keep your culture and don't integrate to our society. But that being said, in our Constitution, it is written in our Constitution that this country has been built on the supremacy of God and the rule of law. That's part of our Constitution. But yes, actually, freedom of religions exists in our country, and I'm okay with that. But I hope that we can promote our history. This country, Canada, has been built, with settlers from France, from UK, and with indigenous people. But the new immigrants who are coming here, they don't know the history of this country. I'm traveling across the country, and I deliver a speech, and they told me, Maxime, you're an immigrant also. I'm not an immigrant. I'm a settler. My descendants are French. I'm not. I didn't come to this country 20 years ago. My roots are deep in this country, in Canada. So we need to. That's why we need to stop that mass immigration and promote our history, our values, our culture.
What does your license plate say in Quebec?
Je me souviens.
What does that mean?
I remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
we need to remember.
But you don't remember.
No,
it seems like.
No, we don't.
So, last question. How does this... it does seem like any country, ours definitely, U.S. definitely included, reaches a tipping point with population where there are just too many people who have no roots in the country that have different alien agendas, and it basically becomes unmanageable, and there's sort of no turning back. The country can never be what it was. You can't make it great again. Mm-hmm. How far is Canada from that?
I'm looking in UK right now, what's happening there, and in France. We are not there, but we are near. If we, I said 10 years ago, we need to have a maximum of 100, not 10 years, 8 years ago, we need to have a maximum of 150,000 immigrants a year. And at that time, I was a racist because I was speaking like that, but I was not. And, and now I'm saying we need to have that moratorium because, we had mass immigration. But if we don't stop, in 10 years, I told you, 1.97% of our population, the growth of our population is coming from immigration. If we have that 2, 3, or 5 years more, trouble will be on the street more often than they are right now. So answering your question, Tucker, we are near that, we may lost our country. And that's why I'm saying, I want to save this country, and we, the People's Party, are the only hope for this country. Let's stop that mass immigration, have time to integrate all these people, and, we will be able to regain our country. But if we don't do that, I'm scared. I'm scared for the future of our country.
Well, your Canadian refugees are always welcome here. I mean it. I'm going to continue my defense of Canada as a really... I'm the only
and you
American.
have a nice weather, so here in Florida.
I like cold weather, so I love Canada. Well, Maxime, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Tucker. I appreciate it.
That was fun.
So it turns out that YouTube is suppressing this show. On one level, that's not surprising. That's what they do. But on another level, it's shocking. With everything that's going on in the world right now, all the change taking place in our economy and our politics, with the wars we're on the cusp of fighting right now, Google has decided you should have less information rather than more. And that is totally wrong. It's immoral. What can you do about it? Well, we could whine about it. That's a waste of time. We're not in charge of Google. Or we could find a way around it, a way that you could actually get information that is true, not intentionally deceptive. The way to do that on YouTube, we think, is to subscribe to our channel. Subscribe. Hit the little bell icon to be notified when we upload and share this video. That way you'll have a much higher chance of hearing actual news and information. So we hope that you'll do that.